The way in which Australians pay for goods and services is changing rapidly. Cash payments and ATM withdrawals are declining, whilst electronic payment methods are experiencing significant growth. Westpac's 2015 Cash Flow Report even predicted Australia will be completely cashless by the year 2022. The concept of a cashless society is not surprising given the vast array of online payment services such as Apple Pay, PayPal and PayWave. Alternative currencies such as bitcoins are being increasingly used within Australia. These currencies present an emerging threat to existing payment services, as customers may slowly be moving towards these methods of payment. Whilst these current trends provide valuable insight into the future of payment services, the reality is that the future of this industry is unknown and unpredictable. Therefore, it is essential to engage in scenario planning to provide realistic future scenarios that can be anticipated, allowing businesses to thrive in the wake of uncertainty. In this report, we have identified two of what we believe to be the major uncertainties that face the payment service industry. The two uncertainties for this industry are the level of consumer adoption of new technology and the extent to which government regulation has impacted payment services. To create the four scenarios, we have taken the extreme of each uncertainty and placed them on each spectrum of the matrix. In addition to these two critical uncertainties, there are numerous external influences that must be considered, and these will be briefly discussed in the pestle analysis in the next slides. The payment service industry operates under a strict set of guidelines which has been developed by domestic and global organisations. Conflicting national policies can have the potential to inhibit organisations from completing trades. This delays payment processes and businesses will be unable to deliver their service. Economic factors such as growth, interest rates and inflation heavily impacts the operations of organisations. Changes in the economy also influence consumer demand, which ultimately drives the level of growth in payment transactions. For example, economic prosperity leads to consumer confidence and thus increased use of payment services and vice versa. The millennial generation is far more accustomed to the concept of a cashless society and thus place a greater demand on the payment service industry to continually develop efficient transaction processes. Population growth also leads to more consumers placing a greater demand on the industry at large. Technology plays a fundamental role in the development and future of payment services. The advancement of technology throughout the industry has resulted in more efficient transaction processes. However, it has also hindered the security of many consumers around the world, as there is greater opportunity for fraud and hackers to access personal information. As the payment service industry increases their use of electronic processes, a greater amount of electricity is needed to drive this production. Thus, there is a concern regarding greenhouse gas emissions and the limited natural resources we have access to. Consumers are aware of this and demand that products are developed in a sustainable and environmentally friendly manner. Organisations must be aware of their rights and obligations regarding things such as the privacy of customers' personal information and consumer law. It is important that industry leaders conduct themselves within the framework of this legislation. Legal factors will continue to directly impact the way payment service industry operates, as it can both be an assistance or a hindrance. Scenario 1. Tech domination. With society accepting the technological advancement of payment services and minimal government regulation, here are the impacts this scenario has. The low regulation levels have led to an unstable economy, and there is also an oligopoly which has created low supply and high demand for payment services. New competitors find it hard to emerge, and market control is in the hands of only a few industry leaders. In regards to cybercrime, there are many threats. These include the low levels of accountability for payment services to conduct themselves legally or ethically. Private information is also controlled by a few powerful companies. In addition to this, there is low government interference, and that has led to poor security and high instances of fraud and hacking. Also, the digital currency Bitcoin has become a popular option for consumers as it is self-regulated and they feel it is a safer payment method. Scenario 2. Robocop. Australia is cashless by 2027, increasing the demand for payment services and increasing competition in the industry. However, the strict legislation has led to high compliance costs for many businesses. The high level of regulation has demanded comprehensive safety procedures be conducted to avoid breaching consumers' security and privacy. Payment service companies from various countries have lobbied for the creation of a global governing body to regulate and ensure industry compliance. By 2037, there are 43 countries, including Australia, who have chosen to follow this global body, creating a somewhat universal regulation, making it easier for companies to comply. Scenario 3. Shut down. Regulation has been slow to respond to the implementation of new technologies, causing a range of security, privacy, and authentication issues, deterring consumers from using innovative technologies. They begin to demand cash and other more tangible means to monitor their payments. This lack of trust causes a reduction in the use of alternative digital currencies such as Bitcoin and Flybuys. The business environment for payment services is hostile, and competition to retain consumer trust is fierce. Instances of hacking and fraud are high as regulation has failed to provide adequate protection. Consumers do not trust technology, leading to a reduction of online overseas transactions. The economy thus becomes focused on domestic transactions, and Australia slowly disconnects from other nations. Scenario 4. High School Prefect. By 2025, rules and regulations in the payment service industry will significantly increase. These regulations attempt to promote fairness and security of customers' personal information during financial transactions. Due to the drastic increase of hackers throughout the years, the idea of using advanced technology is discouraged and frowned upon by consumers. Low consumer trust means that less electronic payments are being made, particularly by the older population, as they prefer more traditional payment services such as banks. In addition to this, rules and regulations generally result in higher compliance costs for the industry, making it difficult for them to thrive in this environment. For this reason, some companies are even forced to part ways with the industry. The 4 scenarios depicted throughout this report explore the hypothetical futures of Australian payment services, shaped by technology and government regulation. Our team has a few recommendations for businesses in this industry, which will allow them to respond to any scenario. The first recommendation is embracing change. Businesses should be ready and willing to adjust their practices to whatever is thrown their way. For example, if the future of this industry does become more digital, organisations must adapt to ensure they are not being left behind. Embracing this change will ensure transactions become more efficient, stimulating productivity amongst people and businesses. The second recommendation is to invest. This is essential for scenarios such as Robocop, with high consumer adoption of technology and high government regulation. With the rapid growth of technology, there also comes a need to invest in developing these digital systems. Investment is then required to ensure safety, effectiveness, and relevance in the future. The next recommendation is strategic planning. Long-term strategic goals must also be developed by organisations and government to ensure innovation and success. By analysing different scenarios, governments and organisations would better understand the forces making change and become better equipped to deal with these forces. The final recommendation is that of building relationships. It is suggested that organisations and the government form partnerships in order to effectively deal and become harmonious with the regulations imposed by governments. Both the government and organisations should strengthen their relationships with key stakeholders to better comprehend future influences on payment systems. If payment service organisations implement these recommendations, it is very possible they will experience long-term success no matter what the world looks like in 2027.
Created using Powtoon.